Hello, everybody. My name is Pablo Tovar, and I am a senior at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I am currently working on my music capstone project, and I am creating a podcast that is for musicians. And my podcast title is 3D Wellness for Musicians, where I will focus on incorporating any information and mental health tips for musicians. Um, It'll focus on 3 out of 8 dimensions of wellness, which are emotional, physical, and spiritual wellness. And today, my guest is Marissa Mathia, who is an undergraduate piano performance major. And you want to tell us a bit more about yourself? What do you do outside of the School of Music?
Yeah, I actually teach at a small music studio. It's called Crash Bang Boom, and I have about 15 students right now. And then, what do I like to do outside of the School of Music? I like to pet my cat. I also have some plants that I've been getting into, so that's kind of fun too.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's really awesome. Yeah. All right. And are you enjoying your time here at UNL? This is what, your third year?
Mhm.
Okay. And are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, I've been absolutely loving it. I think the opportunities I've had here are amazing, and then the support of my friends and then the professors too is really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And what got you into piano performance? Or how long have you been playing the piano for?
I think it's like 17 years.
Wow.
I started when I was 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
My mom started teaching me actually. And I think I started playing because my brother was playing, and he's about 2 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I want to do that too. So my mom started teaching me, and then around 8, I went to a different outside teacher. He was amazing, and then I guess it was probably in high school that I really decided I wanted to do it, even though I had been playing and competing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was high school that I was like, okay, this is what I want to do.
This is it. This is a moment. Gotcha. That's really good. That's really fascinating. And so, being an undergraduate student, there's a lot of things that have to occur, such as like practicing for hours and keeping up with their music theory, history, everything, like all core classes and gen eds. What is one way that you what is one thing you do that kind of helps you like cope with any stress or stuff like that?
I think it's really about finding little moments in your day just to breathe a little bit extra, like breathe a little deeper, just pause and feel grounded for a moment.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been working on. That's not something I'm necessarily good at doing, but it's something that I'm trying to work on and grow in.
Yeah, and we can all kind of just find some time for ourselves, and sometimes it's hard to find some time for ourselves.
Yeah.
But I imagine having, like you said, a cat might help with you.
Yes.
Yeah, just hours of petting your cat rather than anything else. So it's nice to have some pets.
Mm-hmm.
But so are there things that so that's something you would do at home,
Mm-hmm.
which is like just petting your cat, stuff like that. Is there something that you do when maybe you get a little anxious when you're at school or just not at home? Like, is there something like a coping mechanism that you use or stuff like that? For me personally, I when I hyperventilate or not hyperventilate, when I get super anxious, I kind of just pat myself, and I'm just like kind of like here doing this for a while and take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
But that's because I can't be at home just on my weighted blanket.
Right.
So is there something that you do when you're
Yes.
just not at home?
Mm-hmm. And this is more something I've learned recently, but I do usually if I'm like in public, you can't do too much stuff, but like I'll do some deep breathing, but with counts. So I breathe in for 4, I hold for 4, and then breathe out for 8.
Yeah.
So the exhale is longer than your inhale.
Your inhale.
And that I think has really helped, especially when like my heart rate is really fast because I'm anxious. That tends to help. And then if I'm in like a practice room or can like go somewhere, sometimes when I put my feet up the wall and then breathe, that's really relaxing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Yeah. And I can imagine just like hours on end, just in a practice room trying to get everything worked out and memorized and stuff like that. So I can just imagine like how that all that's going.
Mhm.
And then you just had your junior recital for your
Yeah.
piano. Yeah, your junior piano recital. That's amazing. Congrats.
Thank you.
What was the most stressful thing that you think was just there for you? Like what's one thing that kind of just like stuck to you that you were just like anxious about? Or was there one to begin with?
Yes, I think my biggest struggle leading up to the recital was knowing that I have been dealing with a lot of anxiety and not being sure where my mental headspace would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt prepared with the music, but mentally I didn't feel super confident like the whole time leading up to the recital, so it like came and went. Like some days I'd be like, okay, this is so exciting, I'm
Yeah.
ready to do this.
Yeah.
But then the next I was like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm really stressed
Like
about
what?
this.
Yeah. Like how is that all gonna turn out?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And what were some things that you did to? Did you used to do the same as like petting your cat and just kind of doing those little like exercises in the practice room?
So I think that's kind of what I did like 2 or 3 weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
But this week I made it an effort to actually make time for myself.
Yeah.
Because the last couple weeks had been so crazy. Just like my days were from start to finish really, really packed. And so this week I was like, okay, you have to not do that this
Yeah.
week. You have to make sure that you get like 8 hours of sleep every night.
Mm-hmm.
Don't drink too much caffeine.
Yeah, that's
I made the
that's a
mistake
struggle
on
for
Monday,
me.
and I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's a struggle for me. Sometimes I don't even realize how much caffeine I have.
Mhm.
Like sometimes at the end of the day, I'll be like, oh, I drank this coffee in the morning.
Mhm.
I might have had this energy drink during the day. I had my pre-workout, which has a lot of
Right.
caffeine. And then I realize it when I can't go to sleep or when I'm just like super jittery for no
Mhm.
reason. But yeah, I don't realize my caffeine intake until way later, until it's
Right.
too late. So yeah, that's something to really take care of.
Yes. And so I actually got a haircut,
Oh yeah.
which is something that I hadn't done for like months.
Yeah.
I was like, it's time.
Yeah. And something as simple as like a haircut can just make you feel like way better about yourself.
Right. And actually, the hard part was making the appointment or like finding time in the day that I wasn't busy to go
Yeah.
make that appointment.
Yeah. Like should I sacrifice some practice time or should I go do this?
Right.
Stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's like it's okay to give yourself like an hour or two just for yourself, kind of just break away from what you're doing, because it just gets so stressful. And
Yes.
being a college student, just worrying about your recital is one thing, and then just everything else, it's just a whole thing.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of time-consuming things. And then, how did you mentally prepare yourself the day of your recital? Like, were you like panicking in a room, or were you just like walking around, taking some deep breaths, or like how was that? Like, let's say like an hour before your recital.
An hour before my recital. Well, so I had to set up the piano, I had to get everything ready. I think one of the things that I found that I really like to do before I perform is sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I find some of my favorite songs that I've been listening to and I sing.
And you just jam out.
Right, because that forces you to breathe.
Yeah.
It also takes your mind off of the music that you're about to play, but
Yeah.
it's still like something creative. You're still like thinking about emotions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's been something that I've really enjoyed doing as like a pre-performance
Yeah.
routine.
Just singing your heart out.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing. Like I do that every time going anywhere.
Mhm.
If I go to work, I like to just crank up the volume from my car and
Right.
just listen to whatever, just before I have to like mentally prepare for a shift in like anything. So going from being like a guest advocate to
Mhm.
being a musician to anything else. So I think it's really important. And I do like that. Yeah, I do that all the time. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, jamming out to music. And then like during your performance, like how was that? Did you just mentally just narrow everything, or was it like what were your thoughts like during your performance?
So for my Bach, which is what I started with.
Yeah.
Great choice to start with Bach, but That one I was nervous for.
Mhm.
Just because Bach is so easy to get tripped up.
Mhm.
And so once I got past my Bach, I was like, okay, I'm having fun now.
Yeah.
And I felt like I found my flow, I guess.
There you go. Yeah. So it was until after kind of playing a bit that
Right.
you were able to kind of just feel more confident and like,
Mhm.
all right, I got this. Okay.
Right. And even though the Bach went fine, like it went well,
Yeah.
I didn't feel as confident until after it.
Mhm.
And then after that, it was kind of like, oh, I can really listen to what's happening here. Because
Mhm.
you're in this huge hall with this big Steinway, and like the acoustics are just amazing.
Yeah.
And so at that point, like the most fun is just listening to how everything is ringing in the hall.
It's just flowing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you think because of this pandemic, and I'm sure you said there was 10 people that were allowed in your concert?
They actually bumped it up to 25 like the
Okay.
Friday before.
Really?
So I
That's
had
good.
about maybe 15 to 17 people come.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Okay. And do you think do you think that was a good amount of people for you, or do you think like if we didn't have the pandemic, like we'd have more of an audience?
I
Like, were you
think,
able to invite everybody that you really wanted there?
yeah, I think with 25 people I was.
Okay.
I know at my like high school senior recital I had maybe about 30. But I think because of the pandemic, it was also a little strange getting back into performing.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I've performed like solo live
Yeah.
for probably like a year or something.
Nowadays, when I hear performances, I'm just like, how's that going to work?
Right.
Like, like I know it can happen, but it's just really strange, especially right now.
Yeah.
But it's one of the good things that we can still perform. So
Yeah.
no, it's really nice to hear yours. And you said yours was uploaded to YouTube
Mhm.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something to really like listen for. So, and so you're also, apart from being the musician that you are, you're also part of the CMTA.
Mhm.
So what does that stand for? What, like I've kind of heard a little bit of it, but do you want to speak more on that?
Sure.
What the CMTA is, yeah.
I guess I'm lucky enough to be the president of our UNO's chapter of the Collegiate Music Teachers Association.
Nice.
So what we do is we've been presenting a lot. Like
Yeah.
we've done online presentations at different conferences. I guess we just submitted a presentation for the National MTNA conference, which is really exciting for us.
Yeah.
And we, I guess, do research projects.
And did you guys travel last year? Is that what I
Yes,
heard? Okay.
we went to. It was the January. Was it? It must have been right at 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, because
At
it
the
was like
beginning of
around the 10th or something.
Yeah.
And we went to Muncie, Indiana for a collegiate piano pedagogy symposium.
Gotcha. And so what does the CMTA kind of focus on? Like, what's one of the projects that you've been really focusing on right now?
So I think our biggest project has been focused on mental health, and from the perspective of teachers' mental health,
Mhm.
but as well as what can we do as teachers to help our students' mental health. And I have loved learning about that, and it's actually taught me so much about things I can do for myself,
Yeah.
which is where I got the breathing exercise, because
Yeah.
we had a professor come in, and she was a psychology professor, and she came and she talked to us about different things we could do, different things to watch for with our students, and so that's where I picked that one up.
Yeah.
Which was super cool.
Yeah. And like one of the things that I think people forget is that like apart from being like an educator and teaching music, you also have to teach like different life perspectives to students, not really just music all the time.
Right.
And so it's really important to kind of focus on those students' mental health as well, which I think professors here at UNO do really well. And I've had the pleasure of talking with a lot of professors about different scenarios and different situations, and it's all been obviously things can't be perfect and just resolved instantly, but there was a lot of effort put into a lot of the things. So again, as an educator, like it's really important to also focus on those things.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's a really good thing that you like a project that you guys were focusing on, and that's really important. So, um, so what were like? Is there any other projects that you are working on right now, or like, is that like still one of the big ones that you're focusing on?
So we've been exploring a couple different options for new projects, but we haven't really set anything in stone yet.
Gotcha.
So that's been one of our biggest projects. And then I feel like we had one before that, but I can't quite remember.
Hmm.
We've done a fundraising concert as well, but I think the mental health has been the biggest one. And because we took two different perspectives on it, that was kind of two different projects of research.
The student and the teacher perspective, yeah.
Yeah. But I think together it's been just a really big learning experience because as teachers, to be able to teach really well, you have to first take care of your own mental health. And so that was a really big one because at that time I was realizing that I had anxiety, like an issue with that.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of eye-opening, like many people deal with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not alone in this struggle.
And I think one of the like things at the beginning or before you even start realizing more about yourself is that like there's way more other people that are also struggling and like you're not alone.
Right.
So even if the other person is kind of going through it, you can also be their friend and kind of be there for them and kind of help each other like cope with both of your anxiety. But yeah, no, that's one of the big realizations and like one of the main things for emotional wellness is that it's kind of being able to take your what you're going through and then kind of changing it and kind of just flipping it to like a better perspective. So you kind of have to go through it. I believe in the whole. I believe in it gets worse before it gets better, and so you kind of have to go through it sometimes to then just flip it and then it's a whole new perspective. And you look at certain people, certain things that you do every day differently, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you realize that. I mean, you realize that you had anxiety, but also you realize that like there's more people that are in the same boat, and we're all here to kind of help each other.
Yeah, it's really a learning experience because once you kind of open up like and really take a look at yourself, then you're able to be a better friend to people. You're able to be a better teacher.
Exactly.
And a better student because then you're able to communicate those things with your. So I had to like talk to my professors about that a little bit. Like sometimes I struggle with anxiety in my lessons, and that's what's happening. It's not that I'm just getting frustrated or that I'm not trying. Sometimes it really is like I'm having a high anxiety day, and it's just really hard to play this for you right now.
And have you ever had those? Well, have you ever had days where you're in both of those positions where you'll be in a lesson and you're the student, and then you'll also have a student and then you're the teacher at that moment in the same day that like you might have like high anxiety.
Absolutely.
Have you ever been in had one of those days?
Yeah.
And how is that for you? Because you're going through both perspectives and you kind of have to kind of maintain and like be able to be successful in both, like both being taught and teaching.
Yes. So I think it's definitely harder to be the student because I think when I go and I teach, I love it, and it's very enjoyable, and I love being able to help my students with that too. Because I know I've seen some of them struggle with anxiety, or some of them just have really bad days, and it's easier for me to be there for somebody than it is to sometimes take care of myself.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm definitely working on still.
Yeah, but having both of those, like I assume it's just not easy.
Right.
To
you have to really
to take criticism, to give criticism, make sure that you don't overstep anything with like just because I'm super anxious today doesn't mean I should let it out on my poor student.
Right.
Someone who like might not have any recognition of whatever is going on or like don't even know what anxiety or mental health really is. So yeah, it's a really tricky thing to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, as a teacher, you kind of have to put up some, I guess they're personal boundaries, but just like knowing that you have to put aside your own issues or problems while you're teaching, because you're trying to create a safe space for your student so they can feel like they can learn their best, and they can express anything they need to express.
Yeah. And is there any like self-growth, or like, do you read anything, like any books? Do you read anything on self-growth or at all?
I haven't so much. I'm not a huge reader.
Neither am I. I mean, I tend to read a few things, and I tend to, from here and there, kind of get into like certain books, but yeah, no, I don't really pick up a book just for fun most of the time. But
I think the biggest thing I've done for it is go to therapy.
yeah, and that's a good thing, yeah.
I started therapy, I think it was last semester, and it's been really great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great actually. And is there a role model that you have that kind of, you take in any advice or anything like that from? Is there a role model that you have right now?
Yeah, I think actually Dr. Garcia has been a pretty big role model for me, because I've been able to open up to him about my anxieties, and he's been really such a good listener, and he gives such good advice, that I always am like, okay, I think he understands, and he definitely has given me so much grace. Yeah, through this whole process, and I think he understands some anxiety struggles as well, because I mean, during this pandemic, it's been absolutely crazy.
Yeah, and again, we all realize who kind of goes through it as we find out more about ourselves.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, Dr. Garcia is the director of the School of Music here at UNL. And so that's somebody who is able to open their doors for anybody, and I think he's always great and just able to he's able to just meet with you anytime.
Yeah.
And he's very open and always makes sure that every student has an opportunity to just go in.
Yes.
So that's a really great thing that you're able to open up to him. And this can, again, I think bringing up that, being aware of that if one student is going through it, I think they're able to kind of talk about it as a faculty to kind of address it to, everybody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the faculty here at the School of Music it's just successful with bonding with students, because they kind of understand, and they're able to relate with students, and they're able to just get feedback from every student. So yeah, so I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
And was he is he the one that kind of helped you and or encouraged you to go to therapy, or was that more like I need to do this, I need to go?
I think it was more, I think my family a little bit, because most of my family has struggled with some anxiety or depression over the years, so it wasn't a surprise that I was struggling with it too, because it can be somewhat genetic. But I think it was actually my boyfriend.
Okay.
It was so interesting. I had always, with a lot of my relationships and friendships in the past, I'd always been the person that people come to, and the person to give advice and to help try to fix things a little bit. But when I started dating my boyfriend now, he actually told me I need to work on myself. He's like, you should go get help. You should go do this. And he wasn't the one that tried to fix me, which was something that I hadn't really experienced before. And I'm super thankful that he did that. But that just made me think of those are the people that I want in my life, people that will encourage me to go work on myself. Because I'd never had that in my life before. So.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. And again, one of the things with emotional wellness is that you're able to create better friendships, create better relationships, and just be a better person. Just when you have everything going, right, and being able to kind of find things about yourself that will help you just keep going.
Right.
And so that's that's a great thing that he was able to kind of help you in that aspect, and that now you're. Do you think you're a different person than you were last year to now, or 2 years ago from now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'm way more self-aware of what's happening. Because I think in my sophomore year, I felt really burnt out by the end of it. And I know I think that's when COVID started, was the end of my sophomore year, but.
And with sophomore, like the end of sophomore year, it's your
Sophomore
continuation, your
mhm.
sophomore continuations, which is a huge thing for musicians.
Yes.
And it's just a whole lot of stress.
It was online.
And it was online too. Well, and I think,
strange.
it was what, March? So then April or May is when you would have done your continuation? Or does the piano studio do it a bit earlier?
No, it would have been when final juries were.
Gotcha.
So the end of the semester.
Yeah.
Um,
And so apart from the whole change of like, we're going virtual to just like
yeah.
like having everything ready for in person. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that semester and maybe the semester before is when my anxiety had really picked up, and it was affecting a lot of different things. I think some friendships, definitely relationships, just because I didn't know what was happening. I felt like I was drowning a little bit in all this work, and I wasn't able to really figure out what was happening. But then I think it was over the summer in junior year, I realized like, oh, I think this might be anxiety. And sometimes that looks a little like depression, but I think it for me is more anxiety based. And so I think that's where it all kind of started in this process and growth for myself. So I do think that I'm definitely a different person, or I'm becoming a stronger person.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. You're finding your self growth.
Yeah.
And just being able to kind of just keep growing. That's one of the beautiful things. But that's really great that you're able to kind of just go through that. And now you're being, I wouldn't say, well, I can't say a better person, but like if you feel like you're becoming better and growing, then that's amazing.
Yeah. I think understanding yourself is one of the best things you can do for those around you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important.
And is there something that you would tell freshman year Marissa? Like, if you were able to talk to her and, just give any tips, what would you say?
Learning to say no is okay.
Yeah.
I've always been somewhat of a people pleaser.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say no sometimes. Whether that's maybe a school thing, or sometimes people are asking you to hang out and you really need the time for yourself.
Yeah.
But I think lately I've been learning to actually take time for yourself, which sometimes includes saying no to somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is hard to do.
And I've struggled with that, where people friends want to hang out and they want to socialize.
Right.
And it sounds like so much fun at that moment, but then realizing afterwards, like, oh, I missed an assignment, or I should have, given myself more time to finish this homework rather than crunching it at an hour before midnight when it's due. So yeah, learning to say no, I think, is a great thing.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've struggled with so much.
Yeah.
Just having to say no and it's an okay thing to say no.
Right.
So.
It's really not the end of the world, and people aren't gonna really be mad at you for saying that.
Yeah.
And it's creating that time for yourself as well. Because sometimes it's I think as an introvert, I need time alone to recharge. And to feel prepared for the next week ahead. So if my weekends are packed and my weeks are packed, that means I don't get time for myself. And then the next week doesn't go as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm stressed out because I hadn't had that time to decompress.
And now, do you find yourself, do you schedule your weeks? Do you go by weeks or by days, when you schedule stuff, or months?
I wish I was better at planning. It kind of swirls around in my head sometimes, my whole schedule, which is not great. I should really write it down, but I think it's more by weeks. Although sometimes I know I have big events coming within the month.
And mentally, do you give yourself time to oh, this day I'm gonna maybe just relax at home, or I'm just gonna go for a walk? Do you mentally prepare, like, or do you mentally plan those, or do you just whenever, like, you just say, oh, I'm just gonna go on a walk right now?
I think it's a little more spontaneous, but I do have days that I know that I can do stuff like that, and I know there's days that I know that I can't. So right now my Wednesdays are probably the day I have the most time to do something like that. But like my Mondays, when I'm there from 9:30 until like 6:30 at night, I don't really get a lot of time to breathe and take time for myself. So I guess it's just knowing which days I have that availability and just making an effort to actually take some time.
Yeah, and that's great. Yeah, I sometimes do that where it'll be more spontaneous than anything, where I'll just say, I'm gonna go do this. I'm just gonna go for a run or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you keep yourself physically active at all, or do you just go with the flow?
Walk upstairs every day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the piano studio is what, the third floor, so having to go all the way up there. And at least you choose the stairs rather than taking the elevator. So.
But I also, when I do actually have time, I like to do yoga.
Yoga. Okay.
I really like yoga.
And do you implement that more now, or is that kind of like a whenever I have time?
That one's more of a whenever I have time. I do try to meditate pretty regularly or journal. Okay. Journaling helps me a lot. But yoga is when I find time and my room's clean enough. Yeah. I have space to do it in my room. That is something that I notice with anxiety. When my anxiety is higher, then my room is messier.
Yeah, I struggle with that as well. I struggle with that. Sometimes my parents will kind of need something from my room, and they'll just go by and they're like, what's this mess? Like, what? There's just stuff thrown on the floor, and sometimes like I get home and I was like, why is that there? Why is a shirt just thrown over here? Like, I would never do that. But then realizing, I'm like, well, I've had a stressful week and I've just been very anxious that I don't realize what I like do in my room. So I just lay everything out. Yep. Yeah, like right now, my room is a mess.
Same.
Yeah, it's a mess. I will not lie to anybody. It's a mess. Like, I think on top of my bed is probably my gym bag, like a shaker bottle, just random things, and I don't realize it until like I have to go to bed. Right. And I'm like, why is this whole thing like on here? So yeah, that's one of the things. But it's great that you try to do some yoga. I don't think I've ever tried to do yoga.
I love going to classes, which has been hard because of COVID. Because it's not really as available to go to actual classes. But because they just create this environment of like serenity. And then you're just able to actually focus on you for an hour and breathe, and you don't have to think about your schedule because you've made this time a priority. I think it's really beautiful when you're able to do that.
And I think, with myself, I don't do yoga, but I think coaching is very helpful for me. And having that person kind of just like there and motivating me, I personally have found that like whenever I work out, that's one of the best things for me. It's just having a coach just tell me like these things. And even if I'm just like sweating and super tired, having that person there is just like very motivational. Right. And it's helped me a lot. So yeah, I guess in the sense of yoga, it's having your instructor kind of just giving you that serenity feeling and just feeling relaxed about yourself. All right, so thank you, Marissa, for coming along to this podcast. And I am so happy that you are here. And you've given all your wisdom and stuff. It's scratch lots of stuff, but yeah, thank you for being here on this podcast, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.